Welcome to No Stage, Just a Chair. I'm Brian, and this is me trying to figure things out without pretending I already know how. If I sound foolish, that means it's working. Music sounds a little 80s? Good. I was basically raised on synths and questionable hair choices. And if any of this sounds familiar, pull up a chair. Let's start with a story. So, during the pandemic, 2020, I'm standing in line at a coffee shop. And when I say standing in line, I mean 6 feet apart from everybody else with a mask on, doing all the things we had to do during the pandemic. And there was this friend of mine named Jeff that was there. Jeff at that point, owned a restaurant here in Oklahoma City and was somebody that I'd known for several years and still know. And I just think he's an amazing human being. So we're standing there talking 6 feet apart with the weird conversations that we could only have during the pandemic. And I told him just in passing, I said, Jeff, I hope you make $1 million. And he kind of laughed and looked at me and he said, why would you say that? I was like, because I just kind of hope you make $1 million. And he said, that's great, but it's not why I do it. And I said, that's exactly why I hope you make $1 million. And he kind of looked at me puzzled. And I said, let me explain. If you make $1 million, you won't go buy $1 million house. What you'll do is you'll end up opening another restaurant or maybe 2 restaurants. And those 2 restaurants will actually make my life better and my city better and the place where I live better, because now I have 2 more really great places to go eat. So I can cheer for your success and benefit from your success because you will make my life better in the long run. And I really like that idea. So yes, I'm cheering for you, but I'm also cheering for myself in the long run. And he kind of laughed, and I told him, I said, and this is a thing that I'm trying to hang on to even now in 2026. I looked at him and I said, when you give good people resources, they do good things. And that really summed it up as clearly as I could. And I think it sums it up even to this day. When you give good people resources, they do good things. And I want to press this and kind of pressure test this a little bit, because when I look at companies and when I look at the people that I'm around, and whenever I look at the causes that are in our world and the ideas that are in our world, I've noticed that there's this kind of subtle pattern that's happening that I want to be aware of. Because for me, if the only purpose behind a business is making money, then I'd rather make room for somebody else. Does that make sense? And I don't say that as like the point of a company isn't to make money. It's the point of it isn't, let's not make it into this either or. Instead, let's expand it into the both and. Does that make sense? Let's expand this idea into both and. It is possible to build a successful company that also has a purpose that is underneath it, and a purpose that supports it, and a purpose that drives it forward. Because when money is the only voice at the table, then for me, it feels empty. And let me say this again, because I want to be really clear. When money is the only voice at the table, hear that? Only voice. When money is the only voice at the table, then it feels empty. A few episodes ago, I talked about my 4 things. I want to do work that I'm proud of with people that I respect on projects that I love that might change the world. And in the ensuing weeks, in these last few weeks, I've actually seen more and more and been reminded more and more of how much that 4th point really matters to me. It matters more than I realized. And I knew that it mattered. I knew that it contributed. I knew that it was part, but I didn't realize how much it matters. And I'm realizing even today how much that matters, because both and exists. I believe in both and. I believe that it is possible to care and be profitable. I believe that it is possible to succeed and have purpose. I believe that both things can be true at once. And I think as we live in this tension between the two, and let me unpack that a little bit more. It doesn't mean that I get to be the arbiter of what is purpose. I'm not saying I'm the arbiter. I'm saying somebody who loves tech and they are a tech manufacturing company, and I may not even see how it changes the world, but in their heart, on a cellular level, on a fundamental foundational level, they believe that this is a thing that can change the world and make the world better, frankly. They believe that. Whether I can see the future in that thing or not, I'm really attracted and it's really appealing to work with those people that have that attitude. Does that make sense? It's that attitude. It's that vision. And the vision is, how do we make our world better? We want to change the world for the better. I don't even need to know the answer to the question. I don't need to know how this all fleshes out. What I want is I want that energy in the people that I work alongside of. I want that energy. It could be generators. It could be oil and gas. It could be biopharma. It could be a restaurant. It could be a counseling service. It could be a candle company. It could be any of those things. But what I want is I want there to be a purpose beyond revenue, both and. Here's an interesting kind of aside, Jeff, that I'm talking about. Since that time, since that conversation, 2 James Beard nominations and a New York Times 50 Best Restaurants in America award. This year, look it up, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Find for yourself. And is a person who cares. It matters. I love that. And this isn't my evidence of truth. This is a satisfaction in seeing somebody. I want to see good people get resources, because when good people have resources, they do good things. He's doing it, and I'm really happy. And it's reminding me again how much that changing the world means. And I want to unpack this a little bit more clearly. And I hope this doesn't sound like Yoda double talk. Changing the world means changing someone's world. I've talked about this in the past. It may be a business who cares about the well-being of their employees. I've got a good friend that one of the things that his company does, he's in manufacturing. He's a great guy, great, really interesting, really great company. And one of the things that they do is for Thanksgiving every year, they give away all of the ingredients for Thanksgiving dinner to all their employees. It's a very practical thing that they can do because they want to see their people be able to celebrate with their families. And this is a thing that they can empower. And whenever they do this as an entire company, they can actually save money because they're buying in bulk. They can actually empower every employee to be able to do this in a way that makes every employee's life a bit better. I really like that. And that's not necessarily something that's global. It's not something that's abstract. It is something that can be empowered in a city. It can be empowered in a neighborhood. It can be empowered in a restaurant. It can be empowered in a factory. It can be empowered anywhere and everywhere. But that's one of the ways that they can look and go, we want to change the world, and we're changing the world for our people. We want to make someone's world better. And the byproduct of that, the thing that flows out of that, is that we start to realize, we start to feel, we start to get this sense that values don't live in statements. They live in behavior. If values are just something we write down, then they don't matter. If mission statements are just a thing that we write down and they don't affect our behavior, then they don't matter. Values don't live in statements. They live in behavior. And one huge indicator of behavior. And I talked some about this in the last episode, and I'm going to talk about it again today because I think it's a thread. Values don't live in statements, they live in behavior. And a prime indicator of behaviors is in the things that we protect. And I'm going to go even a step further. It's in the trade-offs that we make. It's in the compromises that we make and what we protect in those compromises. Because what we protect in those compromises say everything about what we value. They say everything about what we value. Real world example. Talk some about the event that I did, food trucks. Got a phone call from Taco Bueno, of all people. Got a phone call from Taco Bueno corporate. And the phone call from them was, we would like to send out our food truck, which is one of their test kitchens. Because at that moment, food trucks were this kind of big thing. They were having a big moment. And they said they want to send out their test kitchen and be part of our event. I was like, that's not happening. The guy on the phone was like, no, we want to be sponsors. We want to like help you guys do what you do. And I was like, it's not going to happen. Well, why wouldn't it? And I said, it's not going to happen because if we did that, it would actually betray what it is that we really care about. And the things we really care about is we have local businesses, local food truck owners, people who are trying to do something new, interesting here and present it to people. And we would be pushing them out of the way in order to just get some cash from you guys. And it would be a betrayal of trust for them. We want to protect that relationship. We want to protect those people. We want to protect that priority. We want to protect that. And it's not worth the check that you guys can write in order for us to do that. And the person on the other end of the phone said, yeah, but don't you have a board that you answer to? Don't you have a board that might have an opinion on this? And I was like, yeah, we absolutely have a board. And I can absolutely tell you without a second's hesitation that the board is going to be in 100% agreement with this opinion. And they said, okay, really surprised to hear this, but thanks anyway. And as soon as I got off that call, I jumped on a call with our board president and I told him what was happening. And as I was telling the story, as I was kind of unpacking it, his very first question, he interrupted me before I got to the end and he said, did you tell him no? And I said, sure did. He was like, attaboy. So there was this understanding from the word go of what it was that our priorities were, what it was that our values were, and what it was that we really cared about. Their question, you're willing to give up thousands of dollars for this? Absolutely. Don't you need to ask your board? Absolutely not. I already knew what the board would say because we already knew who we were. That matters. It's in that moment that we realize that values don't live in statements, they live in behavior. And that behavior is demonstrated in the trade-offs that we make. What are the things we protect? What are the things that we protect when it all gets real? Reminds me of the Mike Tyson quote you guys have probably heard before. I love the quote, and for some reason, it has echoed in my head, especially for the last few weeks. And the quote is, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Because as soon as you get punched in your mouth, you see how you react. You see what it is that you do next. You see if that's the moment that you give up. You see if that's the moment that you raise your hands. You see if that's the moment that you fight back. Or you see if that's the moment that you lay down. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that's that reinforcement of values don't live in statements. They live in behavior. So what are the things we make room for? What are the things that we prioritize? What are the choices that we're making that indicate who and what we are? Really silly example of this. For years, I would meet with people. And whenever I would meet with people the very first time, a lot of times initial conversations I would have would be either via email or from social media or from phone calls or from introductions. And then whenever I met with them the first time, they would always ask me, it's like, how are they going to find me in that room? And I would tell them, I'll be the guy in a red shirt. I'll be the guy in a blue shirt. I'll be the guy in an orange hat. I'll be the guy in whatever. And I can remember, I don't even remember what friend it was that said this, but I told them how people found me whenever we met for the very first time. And I can remember my friend looked at me and said, "Why don't you just tell them you're the biggest guy in the room?" It was so obvious. And I'd never even thought about it. It had never even crossed my mind because it was just part of who I was, and I hadn't really considered it. But that person who looked at me and went, "Of course you would say this." And as soon as he said it, it's like, of course that's what I would say. So from then on, and for the last probably decade, I've told people, they say, "How will I know it's you?" I'll be the tallest guy in the room, which is almost always the case. And here's kind of part of the interesting thing about it that happens as a result of it. When somebody walks into that coffee shop, that event, that whatever space it's in, and I see them and I'm like, I think that's them. All I have to do is stand up. When I stand up, if I see that flicker of recognition, if I see that flicker of aha, I know that that's them. And if I don't see that flicker, then I just sit right back down. It actually makes that translation happen really easily and really naturally because they know what to look for. I used to signal colors, hats, details. And when I said, I'll be the tallest guy in the room, I let what was already true do the work. It was already true. It was already obvious to everybody else. So I let it do the work. And here's the thing that I want to land back on. The thing that makes you unmistakable is often the thing you stop noticing because it's been true for so long. So what I would challenge you to do after listening to this episode, in listening to this episode, during listening to this episode, take some time to reflect or spend some time around friends who care enough about you to notice your silliness. They will notice the things that are unique and interesting and fun about you. They will notice the things that define you and are character filled definitions of you. I don't know quite the right way to say that yet, but I think you understand what I mean when I say it. Because for me, I say the tallest guy in the room, I stand up. If their eyes light up, it's them. If they look past me, I sit back down. They're not there for me. That feels pretty good. And this is the thing with companies. If what they want is profit, I'm probably not the guy. If that's the depth of their desire, if that's the depth of the value that they bring to the table, I'm not the guy for them, and that's okay. And what's really interesting is because in the last 6 months, I've actually seen this shift where the companies that find me, the companies that connect with me, the companies that engage me are the ones that have that value. It's become this self-fulfilling prophecy in the best possible way. They are naturally finding me. They are naturally identifying me. They're naturally connecting with me. And as a result, because of the things that I've been putting out there, because of the way that I've been behaving, they're seeing my values, and in feeling those values, they are qualifying themselves. Not because they feel the pressure, but because they recognize this. So here's some questions that I want to leave with you. Actually, before those questions, I want to land on this because I want to be really clear. Profit is not the problem. Money is not the threat. Not the point of what I'm saying here. And I notice that there's always this tension, and the conversations that I'm having, the topics that I'm trying to touch on are the ones that live in this tension. And the tension is not an either or. The tension is the both and. Profit is not the problem. Money is not the threat. The danger is when profit becomes the only voice in the room. When it becomes the only voice in the room, when it stops asking what the work is for and starts deciding who the work serves. I need more voices at the table than that one. I need more voices at the table than that one. I want the voice of purpose. I want both and, because I think it's possible. I believe it's possible, and I will stake my future on it being possible. So 4 questions. Where has profit gotten louder than purpose in my work? I'm going to ask these questions of myself, even as I lay them out there for you guys. Where has profit gotten louder than purpose in my work? What trade-off have I been avoiding naming? And here's a really important one. They're all really important, but this is the one that perked up my ears. Who do I trust to do good if they're given more? And whenever I say that, I want you to hear me very carefully. Who do I trust to do good if they're given more? And here's the little wrinkle that I want to throw into it. Parentheses, bold letters, name names. Who are those people that you trust? And when you name names, there's something that shifts in us. There's something that shifts in me. Because when I name those names, it's like, okay, I've said it out loud, I've defined it, and now it's time for me to start living out of it. How do I give those people the opportunity to do what it is that I say that I believe they have the potential to do? Does that make sense? Then the fourth thing. What part of who I am have I stopped noticing because it's always been true? I've kind of touched on this in other episodes when I talk about the thin red line. It's like, what is that thin red line? What is the thing that has been so fundamentally true since the very beginning that it has shaped your career? It's shaped the way that you work. It's shaped the way that you think, shaped the way that you act. It shapes the way that you engage, shapes the way you parent. It shapes the way you have friendships. It shapes all of those things. What is that thin red line? Is there a thing that is a perpetually true part of you? And I think for every human, it's worth asking yourself that question. And it's worth writing down the answer and looking at the answer. And in my life, in a very silly way, that's the thing that you put on your refrigerator. That's the thing that you try to put in front of yourself in the most beneficial way possible. And reminding yourself that it matters. And practicing living out of it. I'm going to leave you with this. Profit can measure success, but it cannot define meaning. Money will always ask the question. The only choice is whether it gets the final word. Does it get the final word? Is it the only voice at the table? This is one that I've got to continually wrestle with. And I've got to continually wrestle with it because I've always looked at, if I'm being honest, I've always looked at money as the thing that dirties the calling. And I don't think it does. I think it can, but it doesn't have to. What I want is I want it to live in its right place. Because if I really believe what I said earlier in this episode, I want to see good people have resources, because when good people have resources, they do good things. Okay, that's what I want to come back to. That's where I want to land. It doesn't get the final word. It just gets one of the seats at the table. And this is the place where I say it messy before you assume that it was tidy all along. See you next week.